what are the major issues, and how are we overcoming some of the major issues in terms of storage for this vast amount of material that's out there, in terms of managing it from a metadata point of view, from a workflow point of view, from facilitating these things like pricing on the fly, versioning on the fly in order that it can go to different screens, encoding, etc. Jobs, maybe you want to talk about that.
I think there are several challenges to overcome. In principle, when we come from a classical VOD platform, typically there was an archive where movies were ingested, and this has been made available to consumers. I think in the modern systems, and especially the systems that we are offering to our customers, you basically have opportunities to ingest content from several sites. So I think it's not just the fact of providing a certain piece of content to different screens, but it's also the offering the opportunity to actually sort of ingest content from various sites. And that includes, I mean, as we said, linear television, for instance, for services like Catch Up or Time Shift or Start Over, which is really something around recycling or reusing broadcast television versus ingesting prime content into an archive. The second or the third option that we also see is something like external archives, where we've been talking about over-the-top content providers. We often see today that, especially broadcasters in many countries in Europe, besides their linear broadcast television, in the web they offer their sort of on-demand videos. So those videos are often quite compelling for customers, and rather than, let's say, promoting those videos at the end of a certain linear television show, making people jump away from their TV set, turn on their computer, I think here the challenge is getting those videos into the, let's say, managed network environment and allow the consumer to make the link from the linear television right away into those type of content.
So it's the ingestion, and then the user interface.
And then the last ingest point that we see is definitely the web in general. So I think there is certainly several claims you can do around infinite content, but I think one of the smartest ways is actually try to allow the system to get content, to ingest content, and to manage this content in a way that you actually offer it to the consumers. And this probably brings us back to the question you've been asking: what are we doing about metadata? I mean, how do you manage metadata if you ingest content from wherever you try to get content? And this is certainly also something that you have to overcome with, let's say, initial solutions, but where standardization can also play a role in the long term.
I'd come in on that and say, if an operator starts off with a video-on-demand platform, maybe relatively small, the key thing actually about on-demand is, it's pretty easy to stream a VoD stream out these days. Lots of people can do it. What is difficult is managing that content as your platform grows. So if you start with a few thousand hours of movies, but you're scaling up to churning 15,000 hours of content every month, it's the management and then making sure that your OpEx doesn't scale with your content. That is really the key thing about a video-on-demand platform. It's making sure your OpEx doesn't scale with the amount of content. So that's what we deliver, is platforms that allow thousands, tens of thousands of hours of content to churn through with no touch by the operators. And and this is just the start, because today we're delivering to one set-top box and with one DRM or CA on it, but we're already starting on platforms where we've got to deliver to 3 screens in the home, all of them with a different DRM on top of them, one in Flash, one in MPEG-2, one in MPEG-4. And so the number of assets that you're going to have to deal with in the back office, that you're going to have to transcode to, the DRMs you're going to have to deal with, is about to explode. And so getting that content management system in place, making sure that the OpEx is kept low, is going to be the biggest challenge coming up.
Is that an argument for standards in encoding and metadata?
I mean, yeah, it would be great to have one DRM and one format, but one video format isn't going to happen because every screen has got a different resolution from a mobile phone to whatever, and and I'm not sure we're going to see an Xbox support the same DRM as a PS3 anytime soon. So we are in a world where there are multiple DRMs and CAs, and there will remain different formats of video as well. So it would be great, but no, there's going to be this huge explosion.
Actually, there's a good point here. On the one hand, if we widen the content, if we broaden, the definition of VOD, at the same time, we are creating more competition, right? So if we ingest content from wherever, if we look at over-the-top platforms, we might find the same content over the top as we have in our managed network. I mean, this is a competition, and no operator likes, let's say, his customers going, to an over-the-top page, purchasing the content for half of what he's offering. So I think this is also something that those systems need to cope with.
So a VoD provider needs to provide the gateways through which customers, in effect, can't go, or a closed environment. I mean, is Cisco in the business of this kind of provisioning with ingestion from a multitude of different sources, and then play out via a user interface?
I mean, the issue that was raised is the problem of standard, effectively, and you do have to support the different encoding depending on the device that you want to target.
And to me, that begins to sound very expensive. I mean, Edward was talking about controlling OpEx, but I wonder how much it costs to buy his system in the first place in terms of CapEx, particularly if we have all these problems with monetizing the audience for VoD in the first place.
And I think you raised one of the big issues that we have today. Effectively, as soon as you want to go over multiple screens, then you will have to adapt to those multiple screens. And Apple has definitely a different way to see the world, and Nokia, and etc. So will there be standards? I think everybody wishes there's a standard, because we believe that by the fact that we're a standard, the whole market will grow faster. And now maybe we have to think more about interoperability between those standards in the first phase to make sure that there's at least discussions and integration between those different clouds. And today they are fairly isolated. So maybe first step will be interoperability between those clouds, and then yes, eventually a standard would come.
I think we're going to see some standardization in home networking and getting these devices talking to each other, and
this is DNS type stuff.
Exactly. But you're still.
But that doesn't help at the ingestion stage or the coding stage.
From on-demand back office and content management platform, you're still going to have to deal with multiple formats and multiple DRMs.
So Olivier, I mean, your systems end up presenting all of this this back office and provisioning to customers across hundreds of different operators and types of platforms. So standardization of metadata and workflow and things like that must be very important to you.
Yes. So I mean, I think so. To piggyback, so all this, it's all good to have all those, content coming from everywhere. But the first problem is, discovery and exploration. So people, through the UI or the middleware, the operating system needs to enable, discovery and exploration. Would it be using an Orca recommendation engine? But there's, other recommendation engine out there. And really going deep. If you really think about the number of titles, Amazon.com, 50,000 titles online. 50,000 titles. I mean, that's a lot of content, that you can. And you could pretty much assume that a cable operator or an IPTV operator would have even more content available, especially if you look at catch-up TV services, and bringing over-the-top content on their platform. So. From a middleware perspective, for instance, things where you need to, having a database in the box, you need to have some form of way of aggregating all that information. You cannot just always ping back the server to see what's going on. So you need to be able to present things in a way that's consistent throughout the navigation, and you need to do that, at a performance that's acceptable to users. OpenTV, we've done a lot of work at the OS front, so for instance, database and bringing content from different sources and being able to expose those APIs to whoever is doing the navigation or the guide. So those are key components. And again, search, or for instance, there's other implication around search. How do you enter a search term on your TV? do you want to do predictive typing? Do you want to, how we've seen that, the keyboard that appears on the TV really doesn't really work. So you have to have very easy ways of actually exploring and going deep, because it's about going deep. And then obviously, integrating the recommendation. You don't just want to have one specific area that's, the recommendation area. You want to be able to have recommendation wherever you are. If you're watching a live channel, you want to be able to jump to something that's maybe on demand, or maybe that's on over the top. So there's a lot of implication in terms of, bringing all those content, those metadata on the device, and then being able to expose that to users so they don't get lost, but they actually get, they consume the content that's the most relevant for them.
Okay, can I just come on that point about the sort of cost of the infrastructure? There's sort of this perception that VoD is expensive to implement, whereas in fact it's not at all. If you've got set-top boxes deployed, then deploying VoD is a tiny fraction of the capex that you're spending on deploying those set-top boxes. So you can see it actually as an investment to monetize those set-top boxes that you've already
So you've
deployed.
got the eyeballs, you might as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we're even delivering video-on-demand platforms to one-way cable set-top boxes now. So people who've got lots of very cheap one-way boxes deployed, and we're using a mobile phone, and you can start off a VoD stream like that. So even to the lowest cost platform out there, we're taking what is a pretty minimal investment, especially compared to what you spend on set-top boxes, and we can deliver this fantastic on-demand service to any set-top box.
Just to add a few words, if I may, Nick, with regard to the OPEX issue, because it's clearly, if the OPEX were linear to the piece of content, it will be simply unaffordable for our customers. And if you add to that the dimension of devices, if you had to do that per device basis, like it is the case in some of the existing operation, like device-centric silos environment, they have one platform to serve set-top boxes, one to serve PCs, another one to serve mobile. So in this space, particularly, what we do at VoAccess is we have, we call it a flexible right management system that sits on top of all these platforms and help our customers to manage in a homogeneous way all the content, regardless which device at the end will be authorized or not for this content, as well as adding the possibility of flexible management on the end of at the end user's perspective. The end user could select purchase on a PC and watch on TV, and these clearly are the key for getting VoD to be more popular and more successful. Because searching on TV may be tricky, but searching on a PC, people are getting used to, and they can search, find, purchase even on a PC thanks to such platform, and later on watch it on a TV.